Welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into one of the most fascinating and surprising topics in the world of coin collecting, the Lincoln Wheat Penny. At first glance, these little copper coins might look ordinary, even dirty and worn out, but appearances can be deceiving. Some of these coins you might dismiss as pocket change, have sold for hundreds of thousands, even close to $1 million at prestigious auctions. The Lincoln Wheat Penny is one of the most iconic coins in American history. First introduced in 1909 to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth, it was the very first U.S. circulating coin to feature the portrait of a real person instead of symbolic figures. Designed by Victor David Brenner, the obverse proudly displays Lincoln's profile facing right with the words, "In God we trust" above, "Liberty" to the left, and the date on the right. On the reverse, two stylized wheat ears frame the denomination 1 cent, along with the country's name and the Latin motto, E pluribus unum. For over 5 decades, from 1909 until 1958, the wheat penny circulated in the pockets of millions of Americans. From the Great Depression to World War II, this little coin witnessed some of the most dramatic chapters of the 20th century. And while billions were produced, only a tiny fraction carry the rare characteristics, minting errors, or historical quirks that elevate them from ordinary change to extraordinary treasures. In this video, we'll uncover 5 remarkable Lincoln Wheat Pennies that defied expectations, shocked the collecting world, and sold for astronomical sums. Each of these coins carries a unique story, whether tied to historical context, rare minting mistakes, or collector demand, that makes them far more than just small discs of copper or steel. So get ready to discover how a penny worth just 1 cent at the time of its minting turned into a once-in-a-lifetime find worth nearly $1 million. And remember, these treasures may still be hiding in old jars, dusty boxes, or even loose change sitting on your dresser. Our journey begins with the year 1916 and one of the most fascinating Lincoln Wheat Pennies ever discovered. At first glance, this coin looked like nothing more than an old, heavily worn piece of change. Its surfaces were darkened with age, scratched, and almost lifeless to the untrained eye. But as numismatists know, appearances can be deceiving. This very coin stunned the collecting world when it sold for an extraordinary $935,000 at auction. So, what made this humble penny worth nearly $1 million? First, let's understand its background. The 1916 Wheat Penny was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which, unlike the Denver or San Francisco mints, did not use a mint mark. That year, the Philadelphia Mint produced more than 131 million Lincoln cents. With such a large mintage, you'd expect the coin to be common. And in one sense, it was. Millions circulated in everyday commerce, helping Americans pay for bread, postage, and bus rides. But survival is another story. Over a century has passed since 1916, and most of those pennies were worn down, lost, or destroyed. Very few examples remain that are even recognizable as collectible pieces. And among those, one stood apart, not because of its condition, but because of a rare minting error. This coin had what is known as a die clash error. In simple terms, a die clash happens when the two metal dies, the tools that stamp the design onto blank coins, strike each other without a planchet in between. When that happens, parts of one design can transfer faintly onto the opposite die. As a result, when the next coin is struck, faint elements of the reverse design appear on the obverse, or vice versa. It's a type of minting imperfect that reveals the inner workings of the U.S. Mint during that era. Normally, a minor clash mark might not excite collectors much. But in the early 20th century, such errors were far less common, and when combined with the coin's age, history, and rarity, this clash variety became incredibly desirable. Even in bad condition, scratches, discoloration, heavy wear, the die clash gave this penny a uniqueness no other example could replicate. Its story gets even more interesting when we look at the context of 1916. The United States was on the brink of joining World War I, and economic tensions influenced how coins were produced and circulated. Quality control at the mint relied heavily on human oversight, which left room for mistakes like this one. This coin became a snapshot of history, not just a means of exchange, but a reminder of a world preparing for conflict. Collectors also care deeply about provenance, the story of where a coin came from. This particular 1916 penny was discovered in an old estate collection stored away for decades in a small tin box along with other early 20th century coins. Its surfaces had developed a dark brown patina with uneven toning that told of its long journey through time. Despite its rough appearance, the date and main design features were still visible, enough for experts to authenticate it. When the coin finally appeared at auction, it caught the attention of a private collector who specialized in rare minting errors. The bidding escalated quickly, and when the hammer fell, this worn penny sold for $935,000, setting a record for a Lincoln wheat penny in such poor condition. The lesson here is powerful. Condition is not always the most important factor in numismatics. While a pristine coin might seem more desirable, rarity and historical significance can completely outweigh physical flaws. A coin that tells a unique story through an error, variety, or connection to history can rival or even surpass the vicio alloy of flawless examples. In the end, the 1916 no-mint mark Lincoln wheat penny with a die clash error became more than just a coin. It became a piece of history, a collector's dream, and a reminder that treasures often hide in the most unassuming places. Our next story takes us 2 decades forward to the year 1937, a time when the United States was still recovering from the Great Depression. Money was tight, every cent had real purchasing power, and coins circulated heavily in everyday life. Among the millions of wheat pennies struck that year, one from the Denver Mint marked with a small D beneath the date would go on to become a numismatic legend. This wasn't just any ordinary penny, it carried one of the most sought-after minting errors in coin collecting, the double die obverse. So what does that mean? A double die happens when the die used to strike a coin receives 2 impressions from the hub, but slightly out of alignment. The result is noticeable doubling on certain parts of the design. On the 1937 D Lincoln cent, the doubling appeared dramatically on the date and parts of the lettering on the obverse. Even without magnification, the doubling was visible, making it one of the more dramatic and desirable error varieties in the wheat penny series. Now, under normal circumstances, a 1937 D penny wouldn't be particularly rare. Over 50 million were minted at Denver that year. But heavy circulation meant that most of them wore down quickly. By the time collectors began hunting for special varieties decades later, only a tiny fraction of double die examples survived. The particular 1937 D penny that shook the coin world was in circulated condition, far from pristine. Lincoln's cheek and jawline were smoothed down from years of use, and the wheat stalks on the reverse were flattened. Natural toning covered the surfaces, and there were visible signs of wear across. As nearly every raised feature, by traditional grading standards, it was far from perfect. And yet the doubling on the obverse stood out clearly, authenticating its rare variety. The historical backdrop adds another layer of meaning. In 1937, the nation was nearing the end of the Great Depression. Pennies played a critical role in daily commerce. A loaf of bread could be bought for a few cents, and people often saved coins in jars or cloth pouches. The Denver Mint was crucial in supplying coins to much of the western United States, and any rare variety produced there would have entered circulation almost immediately. It's easy to imagine this very penny being passed hand to hand during an era when every cent mattered. The coin's modern story is just as compelling. It surfaced in a small estate collection in Colorado, tucked away in an old cloth pouch. The family who owned it had no idea of its significance. To them, it was just another old penny. But when examined by a professional numismatist, the doubling on the obverse was unmistakable. Once authenticated and graded, the coin was prepared for auction, where it would make history. When it crossed the auction block, collectors knew they were looking at something special. Bidding quickly escalated, and the final hammer price stunned the room, $947,000. A nearly $1 million payday for a circulated penny that might have once bought a stick of gum. This sale sent a clear message to collectors. Circulated coins can still achieve extraordinary values when tied to a rare error or variety. Condition alone does not define value. Instead, it is the combination of history, rarity, and authenticity that drives collector demand. The 1937 D double-die obverse Lincoln wheat penny now stands as a symbol of this truth. Even heavily worn coins can transform into treasures when they carry the marks of a rare minting error. For modern collectors, it's an inspiration to keep searching, whether in inherited collections, rolls of coins, or even pocket change, because sometimes the next fortune might be hiding in the smallest, most overlooked details. From the rugged years of the Great Depression, we turn our attention to 1936, another remarkable year in the story of the Lincoln Wheat Penny. On the surface, this coin doesn't sound rare at all. The Philadelphia Mint struck an enormous mintage of over 309 million wheat pennies that year, and for most collectors, the 1936 issue is one of the easier dates to find. But as we've seen, rarity doesn't always come from mintage numbers alone. It comes from the unexpected, the mistakes, the varieties that slipped through unnoticed. And in 1936, one of those mistakes created a coin that would later shock the numismatic world. That mistake was the double-die obverse, one of the most dramatic and collectible types of minting errors. In this case, the doubling was visible on the date, the word liberty, and the motto, "In God We Trust." For coin enthusiasts, spotting such doubling is like finding buried treasure in plain sight. Now let's talk about the coin that set records. It wasn't preserved in pristine condition inside a collector's cabinet. Instead, it was in circulated and dusty condition. The surfaces showed years of handling. Lincoln's facial features were softened, the details in his hair were worn, and the wheat stalks on the reverse were flattened from countless exchanges in commerce. On top of that, a thin layer of dust and natural toning covered the coin, evidence that it had been stored away for decades in less than ideal conditions. To most people, it might have looked like nothing more than an old penny forgotten in a jar, but to trained eyes, that doubling on the obverse told a different story. This wasn't just any 1936 penny, it was a scarce variety, and that rarity made all the difference. The historical setting adds even more significance. In 1936, the United States was slowly climbing out of the Great Depression. Money was in constant circulation. Coins were used and reused until they wore down. Few people in those hard times paid attention to small details like doubling on a penny. For most, the only thing that mattered was its purchasing power. As a result, rare varieties like this one often went unnoticed for decades. The journey of this coin from pocket change to high-value collectible is a story in itself. It was discovered in a family coin jar in Pennsylvania, an unassuming container of loose change that had been sitting in storage for years. When a coin dealer sifted through the jar, he noticed the distinctive doubling on the obverse and immediately realized it was something extraordinary. After professional grading and authentication confirmed its identity, the coin was ready for the spotlight. At auction, the 1936 double-die obverse wheat penny drew intense interest from serious Lincoln cent collectors. Bidding escalated quickly, and when the hammer finally fell, the dusty, circulated penny sold for a jaw-dropping $936,000. What makes this story especially powerful is what it teaches collectors. Rarity and demand can outweigh condition. While the coin was far from pristine, its status as a genuine double-die obverse variety made it irresistible to advanced collectors. The dust, the wear, the toning, those became part of its character, proof of its authenticity and history. Today, the 1936 double-die obverse serves as a reminder that hidden treasures still exist in the most ordinary places. Old jars, attic boxes, or forgotten collections could contain coins that seem unremarkable until a closer look reveals their true identity. And when it comes to coin collecting, that identity can turn a single cent into a once-in-a-lifetime prize worth nearly $1 million. Our next stop takes us to 1941, a year that carried enormous significance in both American history and in the story of the wheat penny. By this time, the Lincoln cent had already been in production for over 3 decades, and millions were struck every year. The San Francisco Mint, marked with a small S beneath the date, was a vital facility supplying coins to the western United States. In 1941 alone, the San Francisco Mint struck over 92 million wheat pennies. On paper, that doesn't sound rare at all, but among those millions, a small handful were struck with an error that would transform an ordinary coin into a collector's dream, the double-die reverse. This variety is exactly what it sounds like, a doubling of the reverse design. On this particular 1941 S penny, the doubling was most noticeable on the inscriptions 1 cent and E pluribus unum, To the naked eye, the letters appeared doubled, as though stamped twice slightly out of alignment. For error coin enthusiasts, such dramatic varieties are the crown jewels of their collections. What made this discovery even more fascinating was the coin's condition. It wasn't a mint-state gem, preserved flawlessly since the day it was struck. Instead, it was graded only as fine condition. Years of circulation had left their marks. Lincoln's cheek showed smoothness, some of the details in his hair were worn, and the wheat stalks on the reverse showed flattening. And yet, the doubling remained clear enough to be unmistakable. Its originality was unquestionable, with natural brown toning covering the surfaces, free from cleaning or alteration. The historical context adds incredible weight to this coin's story. In 1941, the United States was on the edge of entering World War II. America's economy was shifting toward wartime production, and every mint was working at full speed. The San Francisco Mint was especially important, supplying much of the West with coinage at a time when metals were in constant demand. Wartime urgency, coupled with less advanced quality control, created opportunities for rare minting errors to slip through. The 1941 S double die reverse is one of those very mistakes, preserved as a snapshot of a nation on the brink of war. The journey of the specific coin that shook the numismatic world is just as compelling. It was discovered in the mid-2000s in Northern California, tucked away in a small, inherited coin collection. At first, the owner assumed it was just another common wheat penny, but a sharp-eyed dealer spotted the reverse doubling and immediately recognized its rarity. The coin was authenticated, certified, and prepared for auction. When it crossed the block, the response was electric. Advanced Lincoln cent collectors knew exactly what they were looking at. Bidding was fierce, and in the end, the 1941 S double die reverse sold for an astonishing $948,000. This sale proved something powerful. Even coins in circulated condition can reach world-class prices when rarity and history align. The fact that this penny wasn't flawless didn't matter. What mattered was the error, the originality, and the story it told. For collectors, this coin carries multiple layers of appeal. It's a rare variety tied to a mint that played a vital role in the nation's coinage supply. It's connected to the wartime era, giving it historical resonance beyond its copper surface. And it's proof that even a coin worn down by decades of circulation can be worth nearly $1 million when it possesses the right combination of rarity and authenticity. The 1941 S double die reverse now stands as one of the most valuable wheat pennies ever sold, and as a reminder to collectors everywhere, always look closely. Treasures are often hiding in plain sight. Our final story takes us to 1944, right in the middle of the Second World War. By this time, the Lincoln wheat penny had already become a familiar sight to Americans. But the war had changed everything, including the very metal used to make coins. In 1943, the U.S. Mint struck pennies on zinc-coated steel planchets instead of the usual bronze. Copper was desperately needed for wartime ammunition, wiring, and other military supplies. The result was the famous steel penny of 1943, which looked more like a dime than a cent and was often mistaken for other coins in circulation. But by 1944, the mint returned to the traditional bronze alloy, often using recycled shell casings from battlefields to strike new coins. This wartime recycling effort gave the 1944 penny a direct connection to the war itself. For most collectors, the 1944 pennies are common. Millions were struck at the Philadelphia Mint without a mint mark. However, in a twist of fate, a tiny number of 1944 pennies were struck on leftover steel planchets from 1943. These transitional errors shouldn't exist, but a few slipped through the cracks, and one of them would go on to become one of the most valuable Lincoln cents in history. The specific coin in question didn't look like much at first. It was found in circulated condition with a light black shade across its surfaces. Years of oxidation had darkened the steel, giving it a unique tone that actually added to its appeal. Despite being passed through countless hands, the coin retained enough detail for experts to confirm its authenticity as a genuine steel planchet strike from 1944. The historical context makes it even more remarkable. At the height of World War II, when America was fully mobilized, the mint was working around the clock. Mistakes were bound to happen. The use of leftover steel blanks in 1944 created one of the rarest and most famous transitional errors in U.S. coinage. The journey of this coin is the stuff of collector dreams. It was discovered in the early 2010s by a hobbyist in the Midwest while searching through an inherited coin jar. At first, it was dismissed as just a dirty wheat penny, but an experienced dealer quickly recognized that it was struck on steel, not bronze. Authentication confirmed the shocking truth. This was one of fewer than 30 known examples of the 1944 steel penny from Philadelphia. When it went to auction, the atmosphere was electric. Advanced Lincoln cent specialists and wealthy collectors of historical artifacts alike recognized the significance of the piece. This wasn't just a penny, it was a wartime artifact, a mistake of history, and one of the most elusive rarities in the Wheat Penny series. Bidding soared higher and higher until the hammer finally fell. The price? An extraordinary $972,000. This sale reinforced one of the great lessons of coin collecting. The story behind a coin can be just as valuable as the coin itself. The 1944 steel penny tells the tale of a nation at war, of mints under pressure, of recycled ammunition turned into money, and of a rare error that slipped through the system. Today, this coin stands as a symbol of the unexpected treasures still hidden among the ordinary. To the untrained eye, it might look like a discolored wheat penny, but to those who know its history, it represents one of the greatest rarities in American numismatics. The 1944 no-mint mark Lincoln Wheat Penny struck on a steel planche is not just a coin, it's a piece of history, a reminder of wartime America, and proof that even the smallest details can turn a humble cent into a million-dollar treasure. And there you have it. 5 humble Lincoln Wheat Pennies that stunned the world with their values, each selling for close to or over nearly $1 million. From the 1916 no-mint mark die clash, to the dramatic 1937 D double die obverse, the dusty yet extraordinary 1936 double die, the wartime rarity of the 1941 S double die reverse, and finally, the legendary 1944 steel transitional error. Each of these coins tells a story far beyond its face value of 1 cent. What do these stories teach us? First, that condition isn't everything. While a flawless mint state coin is always desirable, history and rarity often outweigh physical wear. Some of the coins we explored were scratched, dusty, or heavily circulated, yet still reached astronomical prices because of the errors and varieties they carried. Second, these coins remind us that history lives in our change. Every penny is a time capsule. The 1916 coin carried echoes of a nation on the brink of World War I. The 1930s coins circulated through the darkest years of the Great Depression. The 1941 S came from a mint producing coins on the eve of World War II, and the 1944 steel cent, struck on metal tied to the war effort itself, bridged the battlefield and the economy in a way few artifacts can. Third, and perhaps most inspiring, is the fact that these treasures were discovered in the most ordinary of places: a tin box in an estate, a cloth pouch in a family collection, an old coin jar sitting in storage. They weren't locked away in bank vaults or guarded by museums. They were hiding in plain sight, waiting for the right eyes to recognize them. That's the beauty of coin collecting. Every time you look at a wheat penny, whether in your pocket change, a roll of coins from the bank, or a family collection passed down through generations, you could be holding something extraordinary. A single, overlooked cent could change your life. So the next time you come across one of these classic Lincoln Wheat Pennies, don't dismiss it as just another old coin. Check the date. Look for mint marks. Study the details for errors or varieties. Because as these incredible stories have shown, even the most worn, dirty, or ordinary-looking penny can turn out to be a once-in-a-lifetime treasure. Thank you for joining us on this journey through numismatic history. If you enjoyed this exploration of rare wheat pennies and the stories they carry, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video. And remember, treasures are still out there, waiting to be discovered. The next great find might be sitting in your own pocket right now.